What is the greatest single threat to your freedom? If you're living in North Korea or Communist China or the Islamic Republic of Iran, I'm not talking to you right now. You've got some other freedom-related issues to worry about. I'm talking primarily to people in Western nations who currently have, at least in theory, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, and so on. If you live in the United States or Great Britain or Canada or a similar country, what is the greatest threat to your freedom? I talk about Islam quite a bit on my channel. I talk about Sharia. I talk about jihad. So you might think I'm going to say that Islam is the greatest threat to your freedom. And you would be absolutely wrong. There are certain areas of the world where Islam may be the greatest threat to a person's freedom, but not here. It's not even close. I also talk about politicians and journalists and entertainers and their role in manipulating people, but they're not the greatest threat to your freedom either. On the contrary, their power is declining. The political realm is becoming so massively polarized, politicians are going to have trouble getting anything done. People trust journalists less than they did in the past. People trust entertainers less than they did in the past. The greatest single threat to your freedom here in the West is a handful of tech tyrants and the trust and safety teams on their platforms who are steering public opinion in certain directions by controlling what you can say and who will hear what you say. Let me give you an example. There are far better examples. I'm going to use this because this is from today. These are the views per hour on a video I posted last night. Notice there's an initial spike, then a decline, then things start to level off, then there's a sudden drop. What are we looking at? We're looking at YouTube controlling what ideas you will be exposed to. A few years ago, when I would post a video, there would be the initial spike in views because people would see that I posted a new video. Then there would be a steady decline. Then eventually views would start to increase. Why was that? Well, the algorithm would be gathering data about the video from the people who watched it when it was posted. What percentage of people clicked on this video? What kind of people clicked on this video? How long did they watch the video? After gathering this data, the algorithm knew what sort of people would be most interested in the video. YouTube would then recommend my video to a target audience, and views would go up, sometimes into the millions. Now, when I post a video, the algorithm gathers information about the video from the first several hours of views, same as before. But now, once the algorithm knows what the video is about and what sort of people watch this video, instead of recommending the video to the relevant audience, it stops recommending the video. The algorithm shuts down the video because it learns that the video is about jihad and that the sort of people who are going to watch the video are people who are concerned about jihad. The video still gets views, just not from browse features. Browse features here means that when you go to YouTube and see a bunch of videos in front of you, you're browsing. You're deciding what to click on. But the algorithm has already decided which videos to put in front of you. Even more importantly, it has decided which videos not to put in front of you. It's been programmed to weed out certain content. Even if you search for a video, the algorithm decides what to show you. I can search for my video by entering the full title of the video. Notice, the video on my channel is nowhere to be found. You wouldn't know it existed unless you go to my channel. My video does show up here. Why is that? Well, this is a mirrored version on someone else's channel. It's only been up 3 hours and it only has one view. So the algorithm doesn't have enough information to hide it yet. Again, that's just one example and not a very important example. Here's what's important. All of the major platforms are doing this all the time. They're deciding which content gets an audience and which content doesn't get an audience. And by deciding which content is promoted on their platforms, they're able to push the population in certain ideological directions. You can always leave the platforms and go to alternative platforms with far fewer users, but that doesn't change the fact that the major platforms are steering the population wherever they want it to go. That's more powerful than politicians and journalists and entertainers, because once you've successfully manipulated the population, politicians have to fall in line or they'll be voted out. Journalists have to fall in line or they lose their jobs. Entertainers have to fall in line or they get canceled. Jihadis would be mocked and laughed into obscurity if their prophet and their book weren't being actively protected by those who control the communication superhighways. We now live in an ideological oligarchy. An oligarchy is the rule of the few, in this case, a few tech tyrants and their trust and safety underlings. Now, if you still don't understand why I say that the greatest single threat to your freedom here in the West is a handful of tech tyrants and the trust and safety teams on their platforms, just think about this. How much political influence did Facebook and Twitter and YouTube wield just 10 years ago? Pretty much none. How much political influence do they wield now? Do they ever get better, or do they constantly, relentlessly get worse, more power hungry, more oppressive? You are living right in the middle of the most epic power grab in history. If these tech tyrants have been able to seize this much power and influence over the past decade, how much power and influence do you think they'll have in another decade? Let me know what you think in the comments section while you're still allowed to comment.